Hello and welcome to the Blood Queen Lana'thel guide from LearnToPlayWoW.com. This is an interesting encounter as it has a unique bite mechanic, a mechanic that you will have to understand in order to successfully complete this encounter. It's similar for both 10 and 25 men, so here's how it works. The boss bites one of your raid members. That raid member gets a buff that increases their damage done by 100%, and that raid member also heals himself for 10% of the damage done. He kinda starts acting like a virtual vampire. And as we all know, vampires have an unstoppable desire to feed and bite innocent raiders, infecting them as well. It's kinda like a disease spreading around, with each new vampire having to bite someone else after a minute of getting bitten. So let's assume you do get bitten. You gonna look shadowy, you gonna get a DBM message saying Essence of the Blood Queen on you. You gonna have this debuff called Essence of the Blood Queen. Basically, you are a virtual vampire. You got 1 minute of extra DPS in you, but after that 1 minute ends, you'll have to infect someone else. After that minute ends, when the time comes for you to bite someone else, on your action bar you will have only one usable ability, the bite ability. It will be located in the leftmost ability location on your action bar, the place where you initially had one key binded. Well, whatever key you are using to fire the cannons in Strand of the Ancients is what you need to press in order to bite someone. If you don't bite someone within 15 seconds, you get mind controlled for the rest of the battle, like this guy, which is a bad thing. If you do bite in time, you will still not be cured. Biting only buys you 1 more minute of extra DPS, but after that minute you will still need to bite again, and so on, every minute another bite. So to understand the bite mechanic is not really that hard. What's really more challenging is to actually organize the bite order properly before the encounter and then to apply it during the encounter. So here's how you do to organize it. The idea is that you don't want two guys trying to bite the same target, for that will result in one getting mind controlled. Also, you want your top DPS to have priority in the bite order, and thus you need to set up a actual bite order. Well, either you set up the bite order, or you have your raiders frantically running around trying to bite whatever they can, whoever they can, which is not a good idea. Another way to approach this is to have infected raiders on one side of the boss while keeping normal members on the other side of the boss. Although more easy to organize, this is also a questionable strategy because ranged need to stay spread out and they can't spread out and be clumped up on the same side of the boss. So the bite order, although it requires more preparation, is still your best choice. Here's how it works. Your first DPS to get infected will be the one with the most aggro following the two tanks. So you can actually decide who will most likely be your first infected DPS by boosting the aggro of one or two of your top DPS with the use of tricks of the trade and misdirection. We had two rogues high up and one of them got bitten. So, after a minute, you have bite 1 occurring. Melee DPS 1 bites melee DPS 2, so you got 2 infected. On bite 2, melee DPS 1 bites melee DPS 3, melee DPS 2 bites ranged DPS 4. You got to have ranged spreading the bite also, so now you have 4 people infected, each needs to bite again. On the third bite, melee 1 bites 5, 2 bites 6, 3 bites 7, and 4, the ranged one, bites 8. Now you have 8 people infected. On the fourth bite, all these 8 will have to bite 8 others, and you will have 16 infected. At 16, pop Bloodlust, Heroism, and DPS as hard as you can. If you noticed, the transfer to ranged was on the second bite, but you can have that done as early as the first bite, if you think that is better. It's just that with melees they don't need to stay spread out, so there is less running and it's easier to bite another melee. Why is it easier? Because as a melee, you can have a list of melee people that you need to bite, and before the encounter you notice their location in your raid unit frames. Whether you are using the default one and you just dragged the frames to your screen for this battle, or if you are using the custom one, doesn't matter, just note their names and location. When the time comes, simply click on their name in the raid frames and just spam the skill while moving in the area where all the melee are standing bunched up. Another way to do this if you don't want to use raid frames is to make a macro, /target name of raider, and have a macro for each of the bytes that you need to do. For ranged, it's a bit more tricky. They kinda need to know beforehand where their targets are. So now, it's up to each individual ranged member to /whisper his targets before the battle and get an idea where they will be at. Okay, now the rest of the mechanics of this encounter are not that complicated. First off, check the shadowy edges on my screen. It's not a special effect. Also notice the skull on my character. At this point I was actually wondering, was I bitten? Is this how it looks when I get bitten? Is this the flames or the one in which I need to go to the other character? Well, it was actually the flames. Notice also the DBM warning swarming shadows move away. Now that actually means that you need to move away because you are pouring flames just like on Jaraxxus. So move away when you get the shadow edges on your screen or you will die. You kinda have to do like this guy here, running next to a wall. On Pact of the Dark Fallen, you get to see a red beam linking you to the other players and causing damage to nearby members. Meet up in the middle to stop the effect. Ranged need to stay spread out throughout the encounter at 6 yards plus because the boss shoots blood bolts that do damage to the target and everyone around it. These blood bolts become really dangerous in the air phase of this battle. The boss runs to the middle of the room, fears everyone, and then starts throwing blood bolts at everyone. It's a bit hard to maintain a certain position with everyone getting feared in a different direction. Use Fear Ward and Tremor Totem. Try to immediately spread out at 6 yards after the fear and use defensive abilities. You need 2 tanks for this encounter, because the person closest to the tank takes as much damage as the actual tank, so have your second tank on top of your main tank at all times. This has been a guide from learntoplayWoW.com. Thanks for watching.